All right, good afternoon. My name is Erica. I am the editor-in-chief here, and I am here with Mayor Keith Pekau of Orland Park, and he is currently running for U.S. Rep. Mayor Pekau, can you get us started by letting us know what office you're running for?
So I'm running for U.S. Congress in Illinois District 6.
All right, and where does District 6 cover?
Southwest corner of it is Orland Park, and it goes across Tinley Park up to an angle up to Mount Greenwood and Beverly, and then Garfield Ridge, and then it comes across and picks up Bedford Park, Western Springs, Westmont, goes up to Elmhurst, and then across to Glen Ellen and down.
Okay.
So it's about 45% DuPage County, 55% Cook.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about your background?
So I grew up here in the district. I was adopted and raised here in Orland Park, and moved away when I was 17, finished high school in Arizona and college, aerospace engineering degree. Went into the Air Force. I was an F-15E instructor, weapons system officer in the Air Force. I was a backseater. If you've seen Maverick, I was Bob in the back seat. Maybe a little better looking and more capable than Bob, but I was Bob in the back seat of a F-15E, and 3 tours over in Iraq. So in the 90s, and an MBA from Duke, moved back to Chicago, raised my family here in Orland Park, where I was raised. And I was a consultant for about 5 or 6 years for a big consulting firm downtown. And then I bought a small business here in town, or just outside of town, and grew that. In 2017, I ran for mayor and won. And then I was reelected in 2021 here in Orland Park, which obviously is my hometown. In 2019, I sold my one small business. I also have a small consulting firm as well. So, and so right now I still have that consulting firm, and I also have, and I'm also the mayor in Orland Park.
Okay, that's wonderful. Can you tell us what it is that you've seen that has inspired you to run for this office?
Well, first, it was inspiring me to run for mayor, and it was basically the graft of the former mayor trying to have a big pension grab. So he made the position full time, raised the pay significantly, made it a full-time position. But really the play for him was he had all these years of service as a part-time mayor. And so his pension was going to go from like mid 20,000s to 100,000, with only putting 18 grand more in. He was going to get 2 million out over 20 years. So I just thought that was unacceptable. So I ran for office and eliminated pensions for elected officials, didn't take one myself, instituted term limits, so no one can do this again. And then as far as Congress, I think we all see the difficulties in Washington, and the fact that they're not getting anything done, and the things they are getting done, I don't think are good for the people. I certainly know as mayor, the unfunded mandates and the way that things have been handled since I've been mayor is not good. And we need good people there with not lifetime politicians, not people who've spent their entire life in Washington, or most of their adult life in Washington, or most of their adult life in politics. We need people with a broad base of experience. And not my lifelong goal to be a congressman, but I just feel like we need good people to step up. And I've served my country, I've served my community, and I think if I'm elected and called to serve my country again, and represent the 6th district, I think I will do a good job.
Okay, and what are some of the issues that you're seeing in the 6th district currently?
So the issues in the vote for the voters, it's really clear. It's inflation, economy, crime. I mean, that's what we hear over and over and over again. So those are the big issues that I think the people of the 6th district want at the top of their list and want solutions for.
And what are some of your solutions for, say, the crime?
So one thing you have to remember, that you're one of 435. So the idea that, like, as a mayor, you can get your things implemented, is probably, as a new guy, is probably a dream. The big thing you have to do is be able to build relationships to influence the process. But I have seen what works as a mayor, right? And so what doesn't work, from an inflation perspective, first off, to tweet out or say, as the administration has, that we have 0% inflation. If you can't acknowledge that we even have a problem, how can you fix it? But what solves inflation from a government perspective? It's being fiscally responsible. It's spending within our means. And here in Orland Park, since I've been mayor, I've lowered debt $52 million, about 47%. We cut operational without really impacting services, because we just were more efficient. We need to see that more at the national level. So it's just good government policies, instead of just continue to spend and spend and spend, that just drives more and more inflation. So, and not only that, the other things that we've seen from government is shutting down businesses, which shuts down supply chains, paying people to stay home from work, which makes the labor pool smaller, which increases the wages and puts price. All of these are inflationary measures, and so we need to do things in Washington that are more fiscally responsible. And on the crime side of things, crime to some extent is a local issue, but what we've seen nationally, we've seen a push. My opponent, voted against extending the fentanyl ban federally. He voted against the Violence Against Women Act. He voted to get rid of qualified immunity for police officers, which even Lori Lightfoot's against that because she knows as a mayor, you could never hire a police officer if they don't have that. That doesn't mean they can operate, unlawfully, because if they do anything unlawful, they're still subject to civil penalties. But it means if they're operating lawfully that they're not. So we've seen that here in Orland Park. We've lowered crime to the lowest level in 27 years. We've done it with a common sense approach. We enforce everything. Two, when we get someone in custody for a crime, we process our evidence in-house, or we do it through a lab, so we get it back in 24 hours. If you go to the state, it's 6 months to a year, which means that person's been let back out on the street. Now you have to put your officers at risk to go get this person in custody again. If you get it back in 24 hours, now they're in custody, and you can get your charges while they're in custody, and therefore keeping them off the streets. So we've done a very good job with that, and we use technology. We've got a targeted response unit that uses Intel to do that. So it's helped keep Orland Park very safe in a time when there's an awful lot of pressure coming with all the catch and release policies of Kim Foxx. The other thing we've seen nationally is that there was a funding program for us for a mobile response unit, which addressed mental health issues. And it lowered involuntary committals by 35%. Why is that important? Only police officers can voluntarily commit someone, and it takes 5 hours. So that's time that the officers stay on the street instead of processing someone. Also, if you think about it, a lot of these people with these mental health issues, they're in a mental health crisis. It's the worst day of their entire life, and we're putting them in a criminal system. If we can avoid that and get them help that they need, it keeps them out of the criminal system, doesn't wreck their entire life because they're having a bad moment in their life. It was a federally funded program that they've just stopped the funding of. So now we have to go out and find the funding. So it's typical of government is if they have a program that doesn't work, they keep throwing money at it because it sounds good. But if they have a program that does work, then they pull the funding. It's like that. To me, that makes no sense. So we need to make sure that we're funding, if we're helping local law enforcement get better, and we have programs that are working, those are ones we should stick with. And the stuff that's not working, we should stay away from. And then on the economy, so since I've been mayor, we've added 600 businesses. And the most important thing we did is we kept things open. We allowed businesses to stay open and operate when a lot of other places were shutting them down. That's one of the reasons why our businesses have done so well. And the other thing is American energy independence. I mean, that is the most important factor. And ties into inflation as well, because everything moves via fuel. So when fuel prices are way up, everything costs more. We need to be doing everything. And my opponent's approach is get rid of gas and oil and go to renewables. My approach is we need to be additive. If we think of just the US in general, go back 100 years, we're not going to have less energy needs as we go forward. We're going to have more. We're going to continue to have more and more energy requirements for our businesses, for people. We're going to continue to see that not just in the US, but worldwide. So why would we get rid of something? Why wouldn't we try and grow everything? And so I think we need to have an everything approach, and we need to recognize that some technologies just aren't ready for prime time yet, and not try and make them ready for prime time by giving tax subsidies. People who work hard for a living, giving tax subsidies so someone can buy electric Mercedes makes zero sense to me.
Thank you so much. Those were some very great answers. When it comes to crime, I have personally seen a lot of what Orland Park has been doing with the enforcement of everything that you guys have done in the last several years. Do you think that that's something that you could take to Washington, D.C. and kind of show them what you've done? And is there a way for you to implement any of what you've done locally at the federal level?
I don't know if you could implement it locally, but certainly talking to people in other regions that are having these issues. Congressmen may not directly affect it, but they certainly talk to mayors in their communities. And so you could, when they're struggling, say, hey, this is something that's worked. Reach out to Orland Park and see what they've done. A positive impact. So that can have a big influence. From a funding level or a national level, I think, some of the programs we've seen, like that mental health program, I would like to see that spread out, more throughout these communities. But I think that's very important. And then I think, the federal government does have an arm to play. And they have here, when you have a prosecutor that's not prosecuting, like we see with Kim Foxx, many times we bypass her and we go to the U.S. Department of Justice and get federal charges on these crimes. So that's the place where we can augment as well. Ideally, they'd be handling it at the local level, but if they're not, there are places where the federal government can step in and do that. And I know that that the Department of Justice is under some fire, and maybe probably appropriately so. But keep in mind that the Department of Justice is very, very large, and so while there may be some places where there's issues, there are also a lot of really quality, capable professionals that go do their job every day, and we can't forget that.
Thank you. You previously mentioned implementing term limits that you implemented as mayor of Orland Park. So what do you plan on doing with the seat of mayor if and when you win?
So I'm a big believer in term limits, but let's be brutally honest as far as term limits at the national level. That requires an amendment to the Constitution, which I think is probably not practical at this particular juncture. I don't think you're going to see politicians across the country at the levels that you need to, 75% to approve, and then, or 75% of the states to approve, and 2/3 of the Senate and the House. I just don't think you're going to see that. I think the best way to implement effectively what our term limits is to get rid of the gerrymandering process we see in Illinois, and we see it in other states too. We see it in Republican states too. If you get rid of the gerrymandering and make fair maps and fair elections so they're competitive, you will see more. You'll see people in Congress for less time, because if it's a constantly competitive district, you're going to see term limits. You're going to see people move more, and instead of just having 60 or 70 out of 435 elections that are truly competitive, if we had 400 that were truly competitive, you wouldn't see people there for 30 years. So I think that's the more effective way to get it done at the national level. At the local level, I've implemented term limits, so I'm a believer in it. I believe we could do it at the state level. It would be great. I certainly think the term limits for leadership at the state level is really important. But nationally, I being practical, I just don't think that will happen. But if it does come up, I would certainly agree with it. If it does come up, I would vote for term limits for sure.
Okay. And one final question, as far as your future goes, granted that you win your seat, where else do you see this taking you beyond our U.S. Congress?
So I didn't have aspirations to be a mayor. I didn't have aspirations to be a congressman. I will go where, if there's some place where people think it's better for me to serve, I would certainly entertain options, but I don't have big political goals. I want to do a good job in Congress, like I've done a good job as mayor, and just do my job. I think we need good people doing their jobs. I think the problem is when everyone has these aspirations, and this goes for life in general, and I think we learn this a little bit as we get older, is that if you do a good job in the job that you're in, you'll see, opportunities may come your way, and then you have to assess those opportunities. But at the end of the day, if you go into something with aspirations of doing something else, you won't do a good job in the job you have. So I tell my kids this all the time: do a great job in the job you have, and then see what doors open up for you in life. And I would have never thought at 51 years old I would have had a complete change in mayor and now Congress. It would never been it's never been on my radar. It just happened. And so I think that just is a good life lesson for everyone. Just do the best job you can in the job you got.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mayor. Good luck in your race. And I'm looking forward to seeing where this takes you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.